UFC Fight Night Vegas 71, Pavlovich versus Blaydes takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Danaa Batgerel versus Brady Heistand. I'm going to be leaning towards Danaa Batgerel here. I think he gets this one done by KO in the first round. I like Brady Heistand. I think he's got very good grappling for the bantamweight division. Well, decent grappling. I don't think he's like a force to be reckoned with in the grappling department, like an upcoming Merab or an upcoming Usman Nurmagomedov or even like a Ricky Simone at that. But I do think he has some decent grappling, but I think Danaa Batgerel is such a big dude for the bantamweight division. I think he's going to be able to at least shut those down for a round. And if he can shut those down for a round, I think he's going to be able to do some real damage to Brady Heistand on the feet. Because although I think Brady Heistand might have a bit of a future in the sport at 23 years of age, I think his striking is not quite there yet. If you look at his striking and his fights, it just seems a little bit interesting, to say the least, in some moments where he seems like he could be open for a Danaa Batgerel KO. So I think Danaa Batgerel is going to open up the card with a vicious first round TKO finish. We move on up the card to another good fight, which is Priscila Cachoeira versus Karine Silva. Where's my coin? Here's my coin. Right, let's go for the old coin flip special. It did me well before. Will it do me well this time? Heads, Priscila Cachoeira. Tails, Karine Silva. I've lost a coin. We're going to do a reflip. That could be a forgotten prediction that's correct. This is the problem with this coin flip. We're going to reflip the coin. Oh God. Okay, I've got it. What did I even say? Okay, let's go again. Heads, Priscila Cachoeira. Karina... Oh, tails would be Karine Silva. I need to do another coin flip because I might have messed up the system. Okay, it is tails. We're going with Karine Silva over Priscila Cachoeira. And the reason is the coin said so. The coin said so. Okay, Lucy Pudilova should have gotten the win over Jocelyn Edwards, but the coin said otherwise. And that's final. No, but seriously, Karine Silva is a very good prospect in women's MMA. Very good grappling. She's been able to get things to the ground and do her thing in her past few fights. She beat Poliana Botello in her recent fight. She beat a very experienced 22-3 Chinese prospect in the strawweight division, and that was a good win for her as well. And that girl was coming off a 10-3 win over at WLF. So Karine Silva's very good. She's got potential. I think she's going to have a solid chance of winning this one by submission. Priscila Cachoeira is good, but sometimes she gets very sloppy, very open, and starts over-swinging shots, trying to land power punches. And I believe that maybe there's going to be opportunities outside of those moments, or in the middle of those moments, for Karine Silva to get this one to the ground and get herself a submission win. We saw Gillian Robertson was able to get it to the ground and get a rear naked choke win, so I think we're going to see a similar thing. Shevchenko, I know it's Valentina Shevchenko, but she was able to submit her as well. If there seems to be a way you can finish Priscila Cachoeira, it seems like it's going to be by submission, and I like Karine Silva's chances of getting that submission, so I'm going to go with a first round rear naked choke is what I'm going to go with. We move on. The coin has spoken. We move on to a real fight. Francis Marshall versus William Gomis. I'm going to go with Francis Marshall. I wasn't too impressed by William Gomis' debut. I don't think this is a lock by any means. I know Francis Marshall should win, and the majority of people should really be picking Francis Marshall to win this one because he just seems like a bit more of a promising prospect. But you've got to remember, both these guys are young. 25-year-old William Gomis and 24-year-old Francis Marshall, so you're never going to see their final form. That being said, William Gomis in his last fight, I didn't think much of Jano Aarons as a prospect, and it was a real tough fight for him. You know what I mean? There were moments where he got caught, he didn't look the best, and it was just weirdly coincidental that that was like the big jump up of his career in the UFC. He has had some decent wins against other prospects recently in his career. He beat Tobias Harila by decision in Cage Warriors, but Tobias Harila, if you've watched him fight, I've watched him fight quite a bit at Cage Warriors. He's a little bit of like a Gaethje without power or skill in a way. He just walks forward at people non-stop, and it breaks a lot of inexperienced people, but anyone good is able to sort of like mitigate that and move well on the outside and get things done. But I am going to go with Francis Marshall. I think he has a higher chance at getting a finish, and I think that William Gomis leaves himself open in certain situations. He's a little bit wild. He throws a couple of unorthodox techniques, and I can just see Francis Marshall catching him in the middle of one of those sequences. Maybe he goes for a head kick whilst off balance, and Marshall just beats him with a punch right down the pipe, connects on his chin, and hurts him badly. So I'm going to go with Francis Marshall getting this one done by KO victory in the second round. I think it'll be a tit-for-tat first round. Both guys landing decent shots, few grappling exchanges. Second round, both guys doing the same thing. Boom. Big shot from Francis Marshall right on the chin of Gomis, puts him away. We move on. Up the card, Mohammad Usman versus Junior Tafa. I'm going to go against Mo Usman. Okay? I'm going to go against him. Because I don't see skill in his game. And Junior Tafa, although he's only 4-0, and that usually is a bit of a red flag, and he is quite young as well, 26 years of age, he's a big dude. You know what I mean? He's decently long arms. We haven't actually got a reading on his reach, but it's not terrible. You know what I mean? You can see from his picture. That's not what I'm looking at, though. I'm looking at, outside of MMA experience, he's done a bit of boxing, a lot of kickboxing. You know what I mean? Like, he's had fights in Muay Thai as well. Like, this isn't a dude that's just 4-0 in MMA. He's just wandered into the MMA scene and he's gone 4-0 and that's it. Time to get him in the UFC. He beat a 6-1 opponent over at Rising. He fought at Brave and got a decent win there by KO. I just think he's better than Mo Usman's last opponent, who was, let me remember the name, Zach Pauga. Zach Pauga seems like a much smaller dude for the division. Just a chubby guy that sort of made his career start in the heavyweight division. Was doing really good against Mo Usman before getting caught with that shot. I understand that that's sort of the thing that a lot... I just don't think you can afford to let Junior Tafa be doing good. You know what I mean? You can afford to let Zach Pauga be doing good because a lot of his wins coming up were by decision. You know what I mean? Decision in his debut, decision in his third fight, his fourth fight, his fifth fight, a decision on The Ultimate Fighter and a KO over Jordan Heidemann, but he came back, got a decision over Jordan Wright. He's not really as dangerous of a heavyweight as Junior Tafa is. I don't think you can afford to let Junior Tafa be getting the better of you the same way Zach Pauga was. So I'm going to go with Junior Tafa getting this one done. A lot of combat sports experience. I think he gets it done. I like his activity as well, or at least his attempted activity, because, you know, he had a scheduled bout for the start of 2022 in boxing. Didn't end up happening. Took an MMA bout, won it. Took another MMA bout the month afterwards, won it. Took a boxing bout a month after that. Well, I like that. He's got momentum. He's young. He's going to be comfortable out there. He was supposed to fight a few times, either on the Contender Series or in the UFC. I believe it was on the Contender Series in May or in February of 2023. Now he's turning around for this fight against Mo Usman. I think he gets this one done. I think he'll land on the chin of Mo Usman early on. Not impressed by Mo Usman, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Losing that fight to Brandon Sales doesn't look good, and he was just swinging really badly, and you know, the decision to Mitchell Sipe where nothing happened in that fight pretty much, and then the other split decision over Eduardo Perez, it was just like there's nothing to this guy that's good outside of the fact that he's definitely on the sauce because he's part of the Usman's pharmacy family. You know what I mean? So yeah, and he's coming off an injury, another big deal. He had a bad injury, that's why he's had a bit of time off at 34. I'm gonna go Junior Tafa getting the first round KO. Long time breaking that one down. We move on. Up the card, Karol Rosa versus Norma Dumont. Oh, I know who definitely wins. Do I risk the coin flip? The coin must. Okay, I got tails twice in a row last time. So I'm going to say tails is Karol Rosa and heads is Norma Dumont. Please. Okay, we're getting heads for Norma Dumont there. I wish I could show you the coin because I'm not rigging this in any way. We got heads for Norma Dumont. And I do believe in that as a pick as well. So I am going to go with Norma Dumont here. I just think she's like such a better fighter than Karol Rosa is. Karol Rosa doesn't really have much ability to get a fight to the ground. We haven't really seen that in great abundance from her in her career. So I don't worry about her being able to get Norma Dumont to the ground. And Norma Dumont has shown some decent takedown defense in her career. You know, Macy Chasson spent the whole fight trying to drag her to the canvas and wasn't too successful in it. So she did lose that fight though, which is unfortunate to see. But she's had, like, Felicia Spencer's a big woman. You know what I mean? And she was able to stop that from getting to the ground. She's coming off a really clean win over Danielle Wolf, where she looked really good. I think she'll get this one done over Karol Rosa. I would have maybe hazarded a guess at Karol Rosa when I saw her coming up in the divisions, because she did have a couple decent wins. But the last two performances, the one against Sarah McMahon was like... And then Lena Landsberg should be a wash. She won a majority decision over her, and it wasn't that impressive of a performance. She should have won, but like, let's destroy Lena Landsberg at this point in your career. I think Norma Dumont just absolutely schools Lena Landsberg on the feet for 3 straight rounds. So I'm going to go with Norma Dumont getting this one done by decision, 29-28 or 30-27. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Rani Yayha versus Montel Jackson. Now get ready for this one, boys. This is the lock of the card. There isn't a single chance on earth that Rani Yayha is going to win this fight. And I mean that. Put your money down. This is a KO for Montel Jackson. And I'll be waiting here in the past, in this video, when you inevitably come back and say, you know what, Guru called it. He was correct. You know what I'm saying? This is a lock. An absolute lock on the card. No doubt about it, Montel Jackson wins this fight. He's got wicked shots on the feet. He's getting better between every fight. I know he hasn't looked amazing against other opponents and that, like, they've survived him a lot of the time as well. Like, but he beat Julio Arce, beat JP Blaydes, knocked him down a few times, but didn't look the best. You know what I'm saying? But he's still schooling these guys and winning comfortable decisions. KO Jesse Strader in the first round, who was 5-1. Lost to Brett Johns, but stuffed like all of the takedowns or got right back up. That's where the confidence in this matchup comes from, in my opinion. He has really good wrist control and finds like 2-on-1 against the cage and gets his underhook back. I don't see Rani Yayha being able to take him down in this fight. And I don't see Rani Yayha's old ass, after coming off of a few injuries in a row because he was supposed to be fighting Cody Garbrandt, being able to get this one down to the ground or being able to do anything whatsoever to Montel Jackson on the feet. So, if Rani Yayha wins, I'll take the beanie off. Just putting it out there. I know he's not going to win. There's no chance at all he's going to win that fight. Montel Jackson is going to spark him at some point in the first or second round. I'm very confident in that. And I dare him to do me wrong, like Jared Vandera. You guys know my locks are the best. We move on. Up the card, Ricky Glenn versus Christos Giagos. I'm going to go with Ricky Glenn over Christos Giagos. Giagos is just like, he's alright against non-top level competition. But then he's one of those fighters where when he does take that step up, he gets smoked. You know what I mean? He gets really badly smoked. And that's not something I really like. He has got a decent win in a grappling competition over Kamjabekov, which is good stuff, to be fair. And he was on a 2-fight win streak, but that was against Sean Soriano and Carlton Minus. At the time, literally probably the 2 worst lightweights on the roster that were there. Neither of them are in the UFC anymore. So, you know, take that for what it is. Other than that, he beat Damir Hadzovic. Again, one of the worst lightweights on the roster. Mizuto Hirota. Like, he hasn't beaten a good fighter in the UFC yet. He really hasn't. And Ricky Glenn I know he hasn't beaten many great opponents either, but he's had good performances against good opponents. You know, like he beat Dennis Bermudez in 2018. He beat Gavin Tucker. I take it all back. Gavin Tucker was a great fighter. What happened to Gavin Tucker? He hasn't fought since 2021 March, after getting KO'd by Ige. Ige took his soul. He's 36 now as well. It's over for him. Thought he'd be coming back on the Canada card. Either way. But he did beat Gavin Tucker. He was the first man to beat him. He beat Dennis Bermudez. Joaquim Silva finished him in the first round with a really, really good finish after a long time off as well. 3 years off. Came back, smoked him in the first round. And then Grant Dawson, the fight against Dawson, he took that fight on short notice. People forget about that because they're like, it was still scheduled for like 3 weeks, I believe, but maybe 4 weeks. But Ricky Glenn got that fight rescheduled because he was coming back to take that fight against Dawson, and Dawson was supposed to be fighting Carlos Diego Ferreira, but Carlos Diego Ferreira dropped out of that fight. They made the fight against Ricky Glenn like 2 or 3 weeks later, and they were scrambling to find an opponent for Dawson. Ricky Glenn put his hand forward and said, I'm ready, I'll fight him. And he added a majority draw. I'd argue, with the way that third round was looking, if Ricky Glenn had a full camp and was fully prepared for Grant Dawson of an 8-week camp, he probably beats him. Because it's not like Dawson didn't have a chance to adjust his game plan to Ricky Glenn whilst also being in peak shape. Glenn didn't have a long time to prepare for a fight in general and mustn't have been in peak shape for that fight. So I think Ricky Glenn would have... He arguably finished him at the end of the third anyway. But I think Ricky Glenn would have won that if not for a short training camp. So I think he is pretty decently good. And we saw what Grant Dawson just did in the grappling department to Mark Madsen. So I think Ricky Glenn's going to be able to either out-grapple Christos Giagos or land good shots on the feet. We saw Tsarukian drop him in the first. Not normally do we see Tsarukian landing good shots like that on the feet and dropping people, but he is really good, I get it. But then we saw him get smoked by Thiago Moises, taken down, choked out, round one. He gets smoked, and Ricky Glenn doesn't. He has a style that doesn't let him get smoked by people. So I'm going to go with Ricky Glenn getting this one done by finish. No, I'm going to go decision. I'll go 29-28. Last 2 rounds go to Ricky Glenn. We move on. Up the card, Jeremiah Wells versus Matthew Semelsberger. I'm just going to check real quick because this might be my first underdog of the card. I'm going with Matthew Semelsberger over Jeremiah Wells. It's a dangerous pick. It really is a dangerous pick, but I'm thinking I thought Semelsberger was going to get smoked by Chaos Williams. You know what I mean? And he went out there and he had a really decent performance against him. You know what I mean? And he took massive shots. He's got a really underrated chin, Matthew Semelsberger, in that division. And I'm not saying that Jeremiah Wells isn't powerful, but I don't know if he hits like Matthew Semelsberger. I'm not sure if he does. You know what I mean? Took Wale Alves to the second round. It was a bit of a close first round, but Wale Alves is no joke. I understand that. But Court McGee is an old man. You know, Blood Diamond was 3-0 and had no grappling game, and that's what happened. He got him to the ground and submitted him. I just think there's no chance of him getting Matt Semelsberger to the ground. Semelsberger's got really underrated grappling. He's really strong for the division as well. Jeremiah Wells has had a bit of time off now as well, just under a year off. 10 months away from the sport. 36 years of age. 36 years of age. Semelsberger's got a reach advantage over him of an inch, which is crazy. You know what I mean? Because he's white. You know, you wouldn't expect that. 75 inches of reach on Semelsberger. 74 on Jeremiah Wells. I think he gets this one done straight down the pipe. A lot of Wells' punches are like looping shots. You saw the one he landed on Court McGee. It was like right at the end of like a left hook as he was darting in. Semelsberger is the type of guy that plants straight down the pipe with shots. Or he like sets up something where he has his opponent going backwards and lands inside of a left hook or something like that. You know, inside of a check hook with a straight right hand. I'm going to go with Matthew Semelsberger by KO. I think that's the underdog on the card that I'm looking at here. I know he didn't look great against Morono, but even in that fight, he had a chance of finishing him in the later rounds of that fight. So, yeah, great scrap with Chaos Williams. You got to go rewatch it. It was a very competitive fight, and he took everything Chaos gave him. You know, coming off a great performance against Jake Matthews, where although being outstruck tit for tat here and there, dropped Matthews every round. Matthews is really good. We saw that against Fialho. Looked like a new version of himself. Semelsberger just found that chin every round. I think he can find it against Wells, and Wells is going to be swinging a lot more open than Jake Matthews is, and he's 36, and he's been out of there for 10 months. So I'm going to go by KO in the first round for Semelsberger as an underdog. We move on. Up the card. Lucindo versus Brogan Walker. I know what... Okay, we'll do heads, tails again, but I'm kind of losing hope in the coin unless it works out here. Oh, I need to give a actual who's who. Tails, Lucindo, heads, Brogan Walker, please. Tails. I'm going to be real. It landed on heads in my hand. And then I did the old, you know, when it lands in your palm and you go... And then it revealed as tails. That's the system I'm using, okay? So it is tails, and I believe I said that was for Lucindo. So we're going to go Lucindo. Me and the coin think alike, you know what I mean? Genius at women's MMA predictions. Brogan Walker lost to Juliana Miller. 33 years of age already. Not a lot of experience. She lost to Juliana Miller. Now, Yasmin Lucindo had a really good performance, in my opinion, against Yasmin Yaregui, who is a really, really good prospect in women's MMA. And she's got really good technique. And they had a really, for a women's fight, they looked like good fighters. Like, actually knew what they were doing on the feet. And that's rare. So that's something to look at there. A decent loss. And outside of that, she was on a great streak coming into the UFC. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight streak with an 8-3 win on her record. And also a 9-3 win over Sarah Frotter, who was in the UFC before as well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Or she was just on the Contender Series. Okay, well, she was on the Contender Series. No, she was. She lost to Robertson and a couple other fighters in the UFC. Livia Hanata Souza by split decision. So, yeah, she was in the UFC. I'm going to go over Yasmin Lucindo here. A win over Brogan Walker should be a lock. The coin agrees, luckily. Brogan Walker lost to Juliana Miller. We move on. Up the card, Bobby Green versus Jared Gordon. I'm going to go with Bobby Green. Bobby Green. I know he's coming off a KO loss, and that's not something that happens very often in his career. You know what I mean? The only other guy I believe that's KO'd him, at least in any point recently, is Poirier, and that was in 2016. Is that really the only other KO loss he has? He retired against Tim Means. That might have been to an injury. I don't quite remember that one. Got choked out by Dan Lozon back in the day. Split decision there. Split decision loss to Edson Barboza. Arguably could have won. I remember that fight. Beat Josh Thompson by split decision. Lost to Poirier by KO. Beat Rashid Magomedov by split decision. Arguably should have got the win over Venata, but got hurt, I believe, with a wheel kick or something like that. Arguably could have beaten Drakkar Klose. Arguably could have beaten Trinaldo. Arguably could have beaten Thiago Moises. Should have beaten Thiago Moises, let's be real. Arguably could have beaten Rafael Fiziev. The only one who's finished him is Dober recently. Is that a sign of a dwindling career? I'm going to go against that. It is a quick turnaround after being flattened like that. Only 4 months. But Adesanya, I know he didn't get flattened, but he just made a quick turnaround and made it look good. And Bobby Green's not a guy who cuts a lot of weight either. He's always in shape as well. So I'm going to side with him. I think if you... And this is such a damning statement towards Pimlet. I know Gordon should have won. I think if you even make it look close against Pimlet, you ain't really that good. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Split decision over Joe Selecki. I don't like that. You know what I mean? A decision over Danny Chavez. Chris Fishgold. These are people that I think Bobby Green would absolutely tee off on and school. You know what I mean? But he has to grind out a win against these level of opponents. And I'm going to go Bobby Green. Teeing off on him. Stuffing the takedowns. Landing at will on the feet. And upsetting the party and trying to call out Paddy Pimlet afterwards, which I am all for. Because I heard Bobby Green was saying, maybe I'm coming towards retirement. Who knows if I'm going to be doing this for much longer. But I think a fight against Paddy Pimlet will be the perfect fight for Bobby Green to go, you know what? I'll take that extra big fight in my career and keep it going. Because if I win that one, I'm going to be a big superstar. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go with Bobby Green winning this one by decision. 30-27, maybe a 30-26, with him just absolutely destroying Gordon in the third round. But I am worried a bit because of his KO loss recently. But again, Gordon, made it close with Pimlet on the feet. And Pimlet did break his foot in that fight. We know that. I'm not trying to give him an excuse, but still, he did break his foot in the first round of that fight and still fought on in the second round to a competitive round. Green is levels above Pimlet on the feet. I'm going to go with Bobby Green getting this one done. And he can wrestle. He has a base in wrestling. I know he's not the best at it and doesn't use it offensively, but his takedown defense outside of the Makhachev fight has always been pretty good. So I'm going to go with Bobby Green getting this one done by decision domination. We move on. Up the card, Brad Tavares versus Bruno Silva. I'm going to go with Brad Tavares over Bruno Silva here. Bruno Silva lost to GM3. I know he's the GOAT of the sport, but you shouldn't be losing to GM3. You know what I'm saying? But it was the third round against GM3, and that's what the 3 stands for in GM3, and we're forgetting about that. Maybe I am a bit wrong here. But I'm going to side with Tavares. He's got a granite chin, so I don't see Bruno Silva finishing him. And he can grapple offensively. I know he doesn't always do it, but he will try. You know what I mean? He ended up on top of Duplessis for the majority of that round after reversing a bad takedown from Duplessis. Against Adesanya, he tried a few takedowns in that fight as well, but Adesanya was able to stuff them. He's a good grappler, and I think now is the time to start using that a bit more offensively. His takedown defense is so good. I know he must have ability to go offensively with the takedown as well. Bruno Silva's no joke, but he did not look good at all against GM3. And he looked like he was scared to take a shot and kind of hoping to get GM3 out of there. Hoping with a lot of the shots that he was throwing. And Pereira did shatter his nose and jaw and nearly finish him in the third round. So that's like a broken bone type of damage where people start wincing after that when they're taking regular shots, like Dominic Reyes after the Yuri Prohaska fight. So I'm going to lean towards Brad Tavares. Very technical on the feet. Nothing too crazy about his game. No crazy KO power. No, he's not really dynamic as a fighter either. He's not too unpredictable, but the fundamentals are good. You know what I mean? He's like a slightly worse Vettori in a way. He's just an actually okay, decently good middleweight. And I think he's going to win this one against Bruno Silva, who looked very bad in his last fight. But maybe that was because he was squaring off with the great GM3. But yeah, I'm going to go Brad Tavares winning this fight. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Song Yadong versus Ricky Simone. The majority of people are picking Ricky Simone. I'm not. I'm going with Song Yadong by KO. I think Ricky Simone is good when he's leading the dance. I don't think he's going to be leading the dance here. Song Yadong is a very powerful dude. Extremely powerful. Extremely dangerous on the feet. I think he had a great performance against Corey Sandhagen. And Simone doesn't throw elbows or knees. You know what I mean? So I'm not thinking he's going to reopen that cut at any point in this fight. I also think a 3-rounder is ideal for Song Yadong's style. Explosive movements. I think 5-rounder against Sandhagen. I was worried, but he still looked better than I thought he would in those championship rounds. Because Sandhagen doesn't really have the power to get respect from him. So it's not like Sandhagen was just walking him down and beating him up, you know? Like Vera was able to in the third round of their fight. I'm going to go with Song Yadong. I think he's so much better on the feet. And this is a great underdog. Is it not a great underdog? Simone is a comfortable favourite here. Majority of people picking him, so the line is going to move in that direction anyway. I'm looking for underdogs on this card, not to pick underdogs, but I'm looking at picks on this card, and I was surprised that Yadong was an underdog. So I had my picks, I was like, any of these underdog picks? And I found, okay, Semelsberger is. That's a pretty good underdog in my opinion. And then, okay, how is Song Yadong an underdog here? So that's my second underdog of the card right there, I believe. I'm going to go with that. And also, Norma Dumont is an underdog. I think there's a few mistakes on odds on this card, in my opinion. Norma Dumont should be a favourite. Yadong should be a slight favourite. And I think Semelsberger as an underdog's not too bad. Wells is a scary dude, so I'm going to go with Song Yadong. Great takedown defense. We saw that against Cody Stamen. And that was ages ago. People forget about this, man. Ricky Simone is trudging along, but he's 30. Song Yadong is 25 years of age. He's 25. And he's had 7 months off since that Sandhagen fight as well. He took time off, healed up the cut, didn't take too much concussive damage in that fight, and he's ready to get back in there. You know what I mean? We saw him competing in grappling tournaments, losing. I get that, but still. The only other fight he's lost was to Kyler Phillips in a decision, and that's because Kyler Phillips is so weird. And he was on the Source, which we now know, and has been cut from the UFC because of it. Fuck you, Kyler Phillips, training partner of Sean O'Malley, who suddenly got really jacked after 2 years off, testing positive for Austrian in a pulsing picogram situation. Big star of the UFC. I'm on to him. I'm telling you. But Kyler Phillips will throw like a head kick, wheel kick, and then a double leg. And it was just like too much for Yadong to download. Simone throws hooks and straight punches and some uppercuts on the feet. Other than that, he shoots big, strong takedowns. I think Yadong's going to be able to stuff the takedowns, see them coming because he's going to be winning the exchanges on the feet. And I think he's going to score a KO in round 2. I think round 1, feeling out process, Simone will land some, Yadong will land some. It's clear Yadong has the power advantage and Simone don't really like it. He starts looking to shoot. Yadong stuffs them, knees him to the body, gets the side, lands a few punches. Simone's back up and nods and goes, okay, yeah. Both guys go back to landing on the feet. Simone shoots again, gets it stuffed or gets him down for a second with a big slam. And Song gets right back up, knees him to the body, separates off the cage. And I think in round 2, I think he's going to find a slick 1-2 down the pipe on Simone as Simone's looking to land hooks on him. I can see that. So I'm going to go Song Yadong round 2 KO over Ricky Simone here. I reckon he gets this done. Underdog. Crazy after that last performance. After watching what Sandhagen just did to Marlon Vera, knowing that when Song Yadong fought Marlon Vera, he was 22? It's crazy to think of. He might have been 23. But that was in May of 2020. When is Song Yadong's birthday? December. He was 22. He was 22 years of age when he was fighting Marlon Vera. And he won. Arguably shouldn't have won. But still. That is crazy. So I'm actually going to go with Song Yadong here by KO. The improvements he can make in such a short amount of time are staggering. We move on. Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes. This is going to be a long prediction video. I apologize. But I'm going to go with Sergei Pavlovich over Curtis Blaydes. I was leaning towards Curtis Blaydes for a long time. But Dober did some convincing. I'm joking now. But I'm going to go Sergei Pavlovich over Curtis Blaydes, I think. I was watching back a few impressive Curtis Blaydes performances. They were still impressive, but they weren't quite as good as I remember them. You know what I'm saying? They weren't quite as good as I remember them. The Rosenstruik fight. I would hazard a guess. I don't know about you guys, but there's certain amounts of power on the feet where Blaydes just is waiting to get beaten by them at certain points. Don't you guys sense that sometimes in his fights? He looks good against Volkov early in their fight, but that was a smaller version of Volkov, and I think a worse version of Volkov. Either way, though, against Derek Lewis and Jairzinho Rosenstruik, he's very skittish on the feet, you know? And against Aspinall and Pavlovich, I guess he, against Aspinall and Dorcas, I guess he just saw it as, these guys are fast, I'm also quite fast, and I can move well, I don't have to fear one-punch knockout power from them. You know what I'm saying? The same way he does against Rosenstruik and Derek Lewis. He has to fear one-punch power here against Pavlovich. I think Sergei Pavlovich's takedown defense, yes or no, is better than Rosenstruik's. Because he's been working... I was worried about his takedown defense because he took his debut against Overeem and, you know, he got finished in that fight. And then we saw Blaydes take down Overeem and that was a really bad look. But Overeem sort of like took him off his feet with like a sweep and then just dominated on top position. And Overeem's a very technical dude and he has a lot of experience grappling. So that wasn't a good look for Pavlovich. But he was landing some good shots on Overeem against a cage before that. But that was his debut. You know what I mean? It was after a year off as well. After a year out of his career, 2017 November to 2018 November, he'd been out for a whole year before that fight. Since then, he stayed active, got a KO over Gomis in 2019, came back 6 months later, got another KO, had a fight against Garn cancel, a fight against Tom Aspinall cancel, a fight against Tanabosa cancel, and then came back against Shamil, got a KO there. Destroyed Derek Lewis a few months later. Destroyed Tai Tuivasa a few months later. And made weight for the Jones-Garn fight. So he's clearly healthy. Or he wouldn't be doing, I'll take that and this and that opportunity. And now he's having this fight here a couple of months after the Tuivasa one, where he took no damage. Rosenstruik gave Blaydes problems in that fight. I rewatched it and I thought, Blaydes, unanimous decision. I remember he took him down and beat him up. No. Rosenstruik gave him problems in that fight. I'll tell you this as well. Dorcas ain't good. I knew he was never good. And I knew Blaydes was going to beat him by KO or by TKO to ground and pound. I picked that to happen. Chris Dorcas landed a couple decent shots on the feet early in that fight with Blaydes. I don't know what it is about Blaydes. He wins a couple fights on the feet, and then he starts thinking, I'm a striker. And he starts doing too much. You know what I mean? And to be fair, there's not much to see from the Aspinall fight. We knew Aspinall was coming in injured, and the injury happened. But he was looking fast and dangerous on the feet in that fight and landed a couple of decent shots. I just think Pavlovich, the straight punches, and the fact that Blaydes knows he's powerful and has to watch out for that, I'm going to go Pavlovich by KO. And I thought that Pavlovich's grappling wasn't too good because of the time he got swept against Overeem whilst going backwards, and Overeem beat him up and finished him. But then you hear, Pavlovich was grappling at AKA with DC and Cain Velasquez for a very long time before, like towards the debut time of his UFC career. And he's got great sparring partners in the heavyweight division. He works with Tybura. He works with... Well, there's that whole European bloc team with Tybura, Spivak, Volkov, and then Pavlovich works with them now and again as well. So I think he's going to have improved his takedown defense. Blaydes couldn't take down Derek Lewis, and look what Spivak did to him, a sparring partner of Pavlovich. I'm just putting the pieces together of this MMA algebra, and I can see Pavlovich sparking Blaydes on the feet, hurting him, stuffing a takedown, finishing him, punching over against the cage. I can see him getting a finish over Blaydes. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Pavlovich, round 1 TKO. I've switched my mind. Watched a few fights, changed my opinion. Toodle Pip.